Hey, everybody, and welcome to Olivia's Book Club, the podcast. I'm your host, Olivia Fierro, in studio with producer Margaret Stewart. And for the very first time in our baby podcast's history, our guest today is in studio. So be glad that you're listening for this social experiment episode. It's like, a sociological record of book nerds having to transition from virtual to real life, IRL, as the kids say. And I don't know, I could be very awkward with it. Who knows? But it is only fitting that our guest be a hometown girl, TJ Newman from Phoenix, who used to work just steps away, making her dreams come true and giving us all something to aspire to. Her debut novel, Falling, is on every summer reads list. Gillian Flynn calls it a perfect thriller. James Patterson describes it as a nonstop, totally authentic suspense. And, Don Winslow described it as Jaws at 35,000 feet. So if you haven't put it on the top of your TBR, you're doing so today. So, Tori, congratulations.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me on. I agree. I feel rusty, It's like, oh my gosh, a person in the flesh, live. This is very exciting.
Like, do we high five?
Right.
Is it the elbow? I don't know. I can't remember.
We're all trying to figure out how to human again.
Exactly. And and to put on real shoes. So, there's so many things to discuss. But my goodness, you are debuting your novel at just an incredible time. Start of the summer, travel season. People are ready to go. They've got time on their hands. They're making their list. This is huge. And it is lining up straight out of a movie for you. How do you feel right now? Are you pinching yourself?
Every day. It feels like I'm watching a movie because it's just... I still can't believe this is all happening. I worked so hard for so long to get here, and now that I'm here, I really do feel like I'm constantly looking around going, this is real, though. I'm not going to wake up. Yeah. This is actually happening, and it is.
So the backstory, first of all, Falling is incredible. I read it. It's the kind of book that you don't want to put down, so you burn through it so quick, and we'll talk more about how you came to create these characters and the setting and all of the suspense that you're building up in a moment. But I want to congratulate you even more so than on the talent that's apparent in the pages of Falling, but on your tenacity. I read that 41 rejections before the right literary agent took you on and this book on. That's incredible.
Thank you.
There's a lot to be taken away from that and a lot that you discovered about yourself, I imagine, through that.
Absolutely. I'm here. We're at the finish line, right? But it was a long, hard, uphill road to get here. I wrote over 30 drafts of this book. I queried, like you said, 41 agents who all said no before I got my one yes. And I felt every single one of those 41 rejections. It was a very, writing in and of itself is sort of a isolated and lonely experience. You're literally alone in a room just writing. And after that whole experience of writing it, then trying to get it represented, because in the publishing industry, you have to have an agent. That's your way into the industry. It was a long, hard road, and I just refused to give up. I kept telling myself, you didn't come this far just to come this far. Mm-hmm. And so I just kept going until I got that one yes that I needed.
Wow. And it was the yes, because it puts you on a path to be working with the very best in the industry.
Yeah. And that's why the agent that I have now was my 42nd query, because he's a big fish. And so I thought, he'd be great. That'd be the perfect fit for this book. But there's not a chance. There's not a chance in the world that he would ever look at this. So that's, by the time you're at your 42nd rejection, you're really operating from a I've got nothing to lose position. So that's when I queried him, and somehow the rest is history.
And a little additional side note that you added to your pitch, is that right?
Yeah. When I sent my submission to him, I wrote a personal note, just scribbled on a piece of yellow legal pad, and I included it with the first 25 pages. And for the life of me, I cannot remember what the note said, because it was such a throwaway moment, I expected nothing from this submission. I just knew he wouldn't be interested, which is why I wrote this note that was oh yeah, this and this, and was very confident and bold and like, great story, I can sell it. You won, yeah, nothing could be further from the truth of how I felt, and I remember laughing as I wrote it because it felt so ridiculous. Because I was not confident. I was not sure this was a good thing. I've had so far 41 people tell me, no, this isn't a good thing. You should quit. You should give up. So the last thing I felt was like, this is a great book and you should want to represent it. But, maybe that had something to do with it. That sort of like, whatever, I'm just going for it and we'll see what happens mentality. But whatever it is, it caught his eye and he ended up saying yes.
It's a fake it till you make it, or like This Secret in Action or something like that.
Absolutely. And it's like when I started writing this book, like I didn't know what I was doing. I've written my whole life. I've dreamed of being an author my whole life, but never at this level. So really my MO this entire process was just, kind of shrug and keep going. Yeah. Like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just going to keep doing it till I figure it out. And that's been every step along this way. And it's really been a great learning experience that I don't think most people know what we're doing. And you realize that the older you get, it's like, oh, so everybody's just kind of moving forward, just trying things until we figure it out. And so that's my MO.
Doing your best not to fall on your face, and in the process, you are having everything line up. I mean, the stars just magically. The right book, the right time, the right person, the right writer, and the right team supporting you. Your journey began with books, not far from here, as a bookseller in Changing Hands bookstore. So take me to that person. I mean, you look at her and you think of where you are now. I know that the team over there is just so elated for what's going on for you. I mean, what's it going to be like when you walk in there for your book launch event and you're looking around and you're seeing your own books on those shelves?
It's going to be, I mean, this whole experience has been surreal, but that is going to be the moment that I think it's really going to come home. That's the moment that it's going to be apparent that, like, this came true. When I was getting those rejections, when I was writing this, when everything was uphill, one thing that was an absolute thing that I visualized that kept me moving forward, I visualized myself at Changing Hands, my former place of employment, having an author signing event. And that's what kept me going. And so now the fact that, like, that visualization has, like, manifested itself into real life and is going to in just a couple of weeks, it's absolutely insane. And all my family and friends are going to be there, and everybody from the store. It's just going to be such a wonderful moment. And when I worked at Changing Hands, that's when, like I said, I'd always wanted to be a writer, but it was my time working at Changing Hands when it became a concrete goal. It went from a dream to a concrete goal of like, no, I love this industry. I love being surrounded by books. I love talking about books. I want to be a part of this.
It's incredible. It's incredible to think about, because you're just surrounded by it. You're in that environment. You're with people who just love to read as much as you do. I mean, it's so much fun to go in there anytime to ask for a recommendation, whether it's for a kid or for, whomever is hard to buy for. You're just looking to change genres. So that passion is very contagious. And it must fuel what you're doing now in the greatest way. But from Changing Hands, you move on to another industry that clearly these were all little dominoes lining up to this moment. What drew you to being a flight attendant?
Well, my mom was a flight attendant and my sister was a flight attendant. So I grew up in the industry. It's the family business, as we call it. And I knew the benefits. I knew, the literal flight benefits, and I knew the travel or the schedule benefits and the way that you could make a flexible schedule. And when the opportunity to fly came up, I felt like it was an opportunity I couldn't pass up. And mainly because I knew that I would still be able to pursue creative pursuits while doing that job as well.
So your mom, and I got to admit, I must have been feeling very soft when I was finishing this book, because I read through all of the acknowledgments and I got a little teary-eyed when you were talking about your mom in particular, and that parental figure who just gives you the shove when you need that shove and is always right. And what has this moment been like for her?
She She's loving this because she gets to say, I told you so every single day. I mean, you know, because my mom is the first person that I showed the first draft of the manuscript to, which was garbage. A first draft is always just absolute garbage. But I showed it to her, and like my mom, she's saying, you know, this is great. This is something. No, it really is. And she said, you know, maintain that line throughout all the drafts that she read throughout this whole process. And the whole time I'm going, yeah, but you're my mom. Like, come on, you're my mom. How can I trust you? You're supposed to say, you've been saying that since I, you know, was born. So for her to say, see, it's not just me. I told you so. It's not just because I'm your mother. She's loving it.
It is incredible. It's to see a dream come true is exciting, you know, to even be, you know, very much on the peripheral and then to be a parent and to be watching this. I cannot even imagine. So let's talk about when you were coming up with this story. First of all, I imagine that you're an avid reader, given your background of working at the bookstore and all of that. You had a desire to write. Had you written a book before that just didn't make it to here?
I've written a lot of stuff before. Okay. Most of it I abandoned, though, for one reason or another. Life gets in the way, and frankly, confidence gets in the way. There's a lot of stories that I put down because it's very easy to listen to the voice that says, oh, this isn't good. This is embarrassing, actually. Just stop. And then so it's easier to just put it down and walk away. So this was the first book that, not just that I've taken as far as publication, because it's clearly my first novel, but it's the first book that I took this far in the process, too.
Do any of those ideas that you had touched upon in the past, now with this newfound confidence of T.J. Newman bidding war words and headlines together, you know, are there any of those stories or characters worth revisiting probably down the road?
Some of them definitely deserve to be abandoned and left in the dust, but there's a few that I go, you know what, I think there was actually something there. And I think, you know, maybe it just wasn't the right time for that. I'm going to circle back to that.
So genre, did you always put yourself in the space of writing something suspenseful, or were you thinking of exploring what do you read and what did you picture writing?
I think I'm a child of the 90s, right? So I grew up reading and watching blockbuster thrillers, you know, Jurassic Park, Michael Crichton, John Grisham, you know, all of these sort of big, huge stories that just grab you from the beginning and refuse to let you go until the very end. And I have a balanced diet, you know. I read everything and I watch everything. And I've also dabbled in writing lots of different styles. But I think I've noticed that as you get older, you begin to accept the fact that your time is finite, right? You can't read everything, you can't watch everything, you can't pursue everything. So you got to kind of start moving towards just the things that speak a little bit more truth to you. And I think over time, I just started to realize that the books that I love to read, the movies I love to watch, the stories I wanted to tell were thrillers, were these captivating, can't put it down stories.
They're so satisfying for readers. And this gave you all of that because you've got heroics and you've got suspense and you're biting your nails and we're experiencing an event that's playing out in various ways with various people who are all connected. When you come up with the characters that you're going to focus on, I mean, obviously you're pulling from your impressions of working alongside for more than a decade, plus the background of having a mother who's a flight attendant, the dynamics of being on board a flight and dealing with passengers. What is the most, I mean, was there one person, one captain at first that you're thinking about that you're pulling from, or is it just a composite of all of the best ones?
It really is a composite of all of the best ones. There's certain like character traits of being a pilot or being a flight attendant that are just kind of consistent. And so those sort of character traits, like I said, are inspired by all of the crews that I flew with over the years. These particular set of characters are complete figments of my imagination, though.
We gotta say that at least.
Yeah, no, but they are. They all are. And you know, and it's funny too because the three flight attendants, Bill, I had to do a lot of character work on. I had to dig deep with him and figure out, you know, okay, what's his deal? I know what drives him. I know where he's at, but who is this person and how does he handle a situation that is emotion-based in an environment that is purely logic-based? So I spent a lot of time digging into Bill and trying to figure out who exactly he is. And Bill Hoffman, the captain of the flight in question. But the 3 flight attendants, they appeared exactly as they are. From draft 1 to the final draft, they never changed at all. They were unapologetically who they were, and they just came to me just like that. I didn't have to do any work on them. They just were like fully formed people from the get-go.
That's when you know it's right, and you leave them and let them tell their own story, right? That dynamic of the 3, and we've got the veteran and the one who's more of a character, and then certainly the new one who's going to need the guidance. I should backtrack because this book is just out as we're listening to this podcast, and it's available to our listeners. So give us the little pitch. Falling is the story of Coastal Airways Flight 416. It's a flight from Los Angeles to New York, and what the passengers on board this flight don't know is that just before they took off, the family of their captain, Captain Bill Hoffman, was kidnapped. And he has been told that if he doesn't crash the plane, they will be killed. And so then the story follows the valiant efforts of, the crew and the passengers in the air and the FBI and the family on the ground in their attempts to do the impossible. It's gripping, and it's all the things you want from a thriller, and your heart's going, and you're you got to go right back to it. So I hope that you, even if you're able to read your own work or appreciate it through the eyes of a reader, know how satisfying it is and how exciting it's going to be for it to be everywhere.
The response that I've gotten so far by people who have read advanced copies, and it's already out in the UK and Australia.
Isn't it already a bestseller in the UK?
It is. Yes. Thank you. Yes, it is. It's so satisfying to see that people, because I queried 41. I didn't stop. This has been a long process because I believed in this story. I know my mom believed in this story, and I thought it was good, and I thought it was a story people would enjoy reading, and I thought it just was fun.
Yeah.
And it's been really satisfying to see that I guess my mom and I aren't the only people that felt that way.
And also, it would have been a burden on her if she needed to buy thousands of copies of this book just to support you.
It would be. I'm pretty sure, spoiler alert to all our friends and family, you're already getting copies for Christmas from my family. Like, that's just Christmas and birthday gifts from here on out. But
until the next book comes out, and then they'll start switch. Gifting that. Yeah. So let me just talk a little. You're new to this industry, although you had been working towards this moment, probably you could easily say for your entire life. The business aspect of it must be mind-blowing. You get over this hurdle, and each thing that happens to you seems like, oh my gosh, now I've made it, I imagine, right? Like, oh, this is it. But then there's something else, that happens next. So what has been the most, slap you in your face, I cannot believe this moment of this journey thus far?
God, it feels like they happen every day. I mean, like you said, I'm new to this industry, and I'm new to every single thing about this process has been a learning experience. There's not one single aspect of anything that's happened that I can phone in, that I haven't had to learn and figure out and troubleshoot as I'm going through it, because every single step of it is a learning experience. And it's been such an absolute privilege and honor and joy, and I just can't believe these things are happening. But if there was one moment so far that's kind of been the whoa moment, was when I did my first official TV interview, and I traveled to LA for it, and we were on the roof of a hotel next to LAX, and I stood there on top of that roof looking out at LAX, at my former, place of employment, the place I was based for 10 years. I mean, I know every inch of that building backwards, and that's the setting of this book. And to then turn around and see, a camera set up, and to be having an interview, that was, I think, the most surreal, slap you in the face type moment, where it was like, oh my gosh, this is happening.
It's just incredible. I mean, the whole thing gives you goosebumps. Your story could easily be a book or movie. Just the journey part.
it feels like I've been living a movie, so I don't disagree. It's just, yeah, it's just been incredible. And I think what's been so exciting too is seeing it doesn't feel like this is something I'm doing, that this is something that's just happening to me. Mm-hmm. Like, when I go to Changing Hands for that event, it's going to be, the bookstore's success too. Mm-hmm. When I look at my friends and family, and I think part of it is we're coming off of a really, really tough time. And anybody that's having a victory feels great right now.
Yes.
And I think we're just all desperate to celebrate and be excited about good things happening. And it's really exciting that within not just my personal community, but in like the Arizona community, that I really do get this feeling that it's like, this is our book, this is our project, this is our victory. Because I'm shaped by, I'm a graduate of the Mesa Public School System the whole way through. And I think, of my elementary school teachers and my junior high teachers who affected me and helped get me to this point. And this is them. This is the culmination of a life of community support.
And not to mention, too, taking from the other industry that you're a part of, because I imagine that the flight crews, that's got to be a very tight sense of family to make those dynamics work, and the challenges and the schedules and the travel and the winding up all over the place, in different parts of the country or the world, together with the ones that you wish you were glad you're with, and the ones that you wish you weren't with, and all of it. And so I wonder, as you were working on this book and processing how the story was going to hash out and taking notes and writing while on board, how much of it did you share with colleagues and crew members about what you were working on, or was it something you were holding real tight?
It was something I held very tight. I basically only told people I was working on something like this on a need-to-know basis. I didn't tell hardly anybody. When the announcement came out, actually, there was a ton of, really close friends and family who would, write to me on the day that it was announced and say, like, oh my goodness, this is incredible, congratulations. You wrote a book? Like, people were very confused. And that's because I did. I played it very close to the chest.
Are we not close?
Right.
You don't trust me. Okay, just come out with it already.
Exactly. But it was, the reason I did that was before I was a bookseller at Changing Hands, I lived in New York because I was pursuing a career in theater. And I got a degree in musical theater, and I moved to New York, and I pursued it, like I said, professionally, and it did not go well. Clearly, we're not talking about my Broadway credits. It was not a successful, venture. And so I left New York and moved back home, back in with my parents. And I was embarrassed. I was mortified. I'd gone before my whole friends and family and said, I'm going to pursue my dreams. I'm going to do this. And it didn't pan out. Mm-hmm. And so I was embarrassed. And so when I started writing this, I didn't tell anyone because I didn't want to fail again publicly. Mm-hmm. And so even the people that I told on a need-to-know basis, like I said, every time it was always sheepishly. It was always like, oh, I know everybody writes a book, but I'm one of them. I'm doing it. So yeah, it's been so amazing, like you were saying, with the flight crews, to see the support since it has gone public, because most of them did not know this was happening. But we're family. Crews are family. You have a level of trust that is hit almost immediately when you start flying with someone. And, we're together late nights, early mornings, holidays, weekends, in pretty challenging circumstances a lot of the time. So there's a sort of, trench warfare mentality that just bonds you together almost instantly. And that's another layer of people that I feel like, this is for us. This is a snapshot of our life that I think is kind of fun to show to the public, of, a glimpse behind, the curtain of this is what it's like back in the galley.
And I think it is a real tribute to, in particular, the flight crew as they're portrayed through this, because you're sort of the unsung heroes. I mean, you talk a lot about the kind of the presence of Captain Hoffman and the way that, he knows that when you walk in as pilot, people give you that attention, and it's very rare that somebody doesn't. And the very different dynamics that the flight crews are dealing with all the time. And it's been something that we've been covering in the news lately, too, as like the world has got going again. We've all forgotten how to behave, and it's just atrocious. So more so it's great to kind of say, hey, look, I mean, this is about a lot more than serving you your cocktail or soda. Settle down.
Exactly. It's like when you're having a heart attack, I'm not going to bring you a Diet Coke. Okay. It's like people think that flight attendants are on board for service, and it's just not true. We're there for safety and security and to be medical first responders. And I think people lose sight of that. And the response that I'm getting from people who have read this book and say, I had no idea. I had no idea flight attendants had that much training. I didn't know you had that much responsibility. I have a newfound respect for the role of the flight attendant on an aircraft. I mean, that just, I couldn't ask for a better response.
Super cool. There's so many great things about this, and I'm gleefully happy for you. I am struck by you talking about your pursuit of acting and performing, and framing it in any context of failure given where you are now. So they always say, that successful people expect failure, thrive off of it, learn from it. And clearly you have in a different way. So what do you think that you learned from performance or from bringing stories to life there that is here?
I think from the position I'm in now, it all makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I look back and I go, oh, of course it had to happen that way. And this domino that fell, of course, pushed this one and then that one. And it makes perfect sense now. And they all kind of dovetail together to make perfect sense.
When you're happy.
When you're happy, yeah. And when it's a little bit more in hindsight, nothing made sense at the time. I was really my whole life I've just pursued things that I loved, things that seemed to make sense and brought me joy. And then that comes up against the harsh realities of the real world. And, I appreciate my time that I was in New York and I had my corners knocked off. That was vital. That was absolutely important. And I know that I wouldn't be where I was, not only like this wouldn't be happening if I had success the first time around, but I also wouldn't have the gratitude and perspective that I have for this moment. Nobody is owed anything. And you learn that, I think, as you get older, that it's you have to work for what you want. And you combine luck and the right opportunities and you can get there. And I don't know that I would have had that perspective if I would have gotten what I wanted straight off the bat.
Or a little bit of success that would have held you in place for too long, that would have kept you from being where you were really meant to go.
Exactly.
I mean, sometimes that middle ground is sometimes, I think, worse than really falling on your butt, because when you fall, you have to get up. But
you have no choice but to figure something else out.
People can tread water for an awful long time and miss their calling altogether.
That's great, yeah.
As we wrap up, what books, I always like to know when I'm speaking to somebody who finds passion in writing and talent in writing, where they became a reader or when. So reflecting on you as a little girl, Mesa schools, public library maybe, what was the book series, moment, class, age, whatever, that you think that it connected, that you realized how you could find something really special in the pages of a book?
I think I can remember the first time that I remember having an experience that made me go, oh, wow, this is something that can affect me in a way that I didn't know, was when I had checked out from the Dobson Ranch Branch Library, Where the Red Fern Grows. And I can remember laying on the floor of my bedroom, reading Where the Red Fern Grows, about, Big Dan and Little Ann, and sobbing hysterically. I mean, just being absolutely gutted by that book. And it was the first time that it kind of connected, that it was like, oh, this is magic. This is magic. I'm literally looking at, black and white symbols on a piece of paper, and it's making me feel like this. This is magic. And it was that young that I realized, made that connection of how deeply you could have something like that affect you and affect somebody else.
Oh, love that. Well, Everybody is going to be talking about this book, Falling by T.J. Newman. You do not want to miss out on the summer experience of getting this book right away and being able to share it with friends and family. And certainly you want to read it quick because the deal is already done. It's becoming a major motion picture. What is it, like Universal Studios or some sort of startup company like that?
Yeah,
I hope
yeah.
it'll all happen.
Yeah, exactly.
So it is going to be big. It is going to be a big blockbuster when that hits big screen. So you'll, of course, want to read the book first because it's always better that way. TJ, thank you so much for being our first in-studio guest for this podcast. Appreciate it so much, and major congratulations.
Thank you so much. This has been an absolute joy and privilege to be here, and to be here in person. This is so exciting. It feels like we're returning to real life.
It's time now for a moment with Margaret, where we always digest some topic related to the author interview. And luckily, because we are IRL, TJ Newman is here, and she is sandwiched between us, and she's surrounded by humans, and she's probably feeling very claustrophobic and wanting to go back to COVID protocols. But she's being kind enough to stay with us, Margaret, and she's going to help us out on a couple of things, 2 topics that we're both interested in: travel, of course, and the books. And it's all wound up in this pretty lady's big success story. So what do you want to know from her?
First, as I just explained off camera and off microphone, I do my nails on planes. I do impress manicures, which are press-on nails, but I know that you aren't supposed to paint your nails. Are there other, like, beauty things that are big no-nos on planes?
Beauty no-nos. You know, the thing with the nail polish thing, it's sort of like just this idea of like, there's a lot of people here. Mm-hmm. That's a smell.
It's the fumes,
yeah.
right?
It's the fumes, okay. Yeah. So it's sort of like that mentality.
It's like
just
taking a tuna sandwich on board.
Exactly.
Although, you know, I get really frustrated when people bring even burgers. Like, I love the smell of burgers, but when you're in that such enclosed space, maybe it's like 5 o'clock in the morning and you're taking an early flight and someone has that random sandwich.
It's frustrating, but I have to say I am a big offender of this because flight attendants, we pack, like, we call it our food bags. Like, we bring our food with us because we can't afford, and it's not healthy to eat airport food every single day. So we bring food with us, and healthy portable food usually comes in the form of hard-boiled eggs and steamed broccoli and, you know, a can of tuna, like all these things that are literally the stinkiest foods possible. So I do have to say I'm actually an offender of that.
I've never experienced a flight attendant or one that's sitting in the seats with us as they travel to and from, but I've never experienced them having harsh smelling foods, even if it is a hard-boiled egg, because it's fresh, but it's not like it was just pulled off a grill
Right.
in the airport, which is with all the other greasy.
Right. We've been lugging it around for the past 3 days of the trip in our bag, and we've been keeping it fresh by putting, you know those little those headache bags that you fill with ice or hot water. Mm-hmm. That's what we use to keep our food cold in our food bags. So we fill that with the ice from the plane, and then that's how you store your food over the days.
I love that.
That's a great idea.
And so, and then you use your time while you're on board in whatever way you want when the people are sleeping, when passengers are sleeping.
Correct.
And do you get to take a little nappy poo too, or no?
No, that is
hard no.
Yes, hard no.
Okay.
Hard no on sleeping. Mm-hmm. Yeah, hard no on sleeping. But reading, that's why, flight attendants, we read a lot, especially in the day before, cell phones and internet on board. And most airlines, each airline is different, but you're not allowed to use a portable electronic device a lot of the time. So books, actual books and magazines were kind of all you had to do to keep busy, especially on flights like red eyes, unless you were, like I was doing, writing a book, figure out different things to pass the time.
What about with international flights? I've always thought about this. Like, I took a flight to Australia. It's a 15-hour flight. That's almost a two work days. So how do flight attendants deal with that?
So on the longer flights, they actually do have rest cabins.
Oh.
So they do have places where they do take shifts and go and get to take a little nap, both the pilots and the flight attendants. So on longer international flights, they do have that. But for your domestic flights here in the States, not an option.
Yeah. I mean, from side to side, it's maybe at the most 8 hours, right? So that's
8 hours is a bad day too. We've diverted somewhere. Yeah.
Right. You're not in the good spot. Yeah. So typical anywhere between 2 to 5 hours feels typical. So,
So what's the number one thing we should know gets on your nerves on a flight?
You know what really irked me every single time it happened, and I would say this happened every single time you do a beverage service, was when you walk up to a row and you say, hi, can I get you something to drink? And they're wearing headphones. Because it's like, you've seen me coming.
Oh, I do.
You know I'm here.
Approach it from the middle.
Yeah, I'm here. And then they always ask, what? It's like, honey, what do you think I'm asking?
What's your sign?
Yeah.
How's your relationship with your mom?
I'm literally pushing a cart full of beverages, and you're wondering what my question is. And it's just frustrating because it's like when you do it time and time again, it's like, just give me the respect of just looking me in the eye and having your headphones out. That's it. That's all flight attendants really want is to be acknowledged as human beings. And that sounds really sad, but that's quite frankly where we're at most of the time.
I know I have friends that, especially when they're big groups of bachelor parties, they always buy nice things, specifically See's candy, for the flight attendants because they know at some point they're probably going to be annoying in some fashion. And so they make sure that they come on board with these things to make sure that the flight attendants know that it has nothing to do with them, as personal
They're planning
people.
to get really rowdy.
These are some good boys, though, I will say. My college guy friends know they have tricks, and they're like, we want to make sure that they know that we don't want to be on their bad side, and we want them to feel like we're going to be good, but we're probably going to be a little rowdy.
That's always appreciated. And, parents do that a lot of the time, too,
good.
because it's like, and look, I have no problem with you having a good time on your bachelor party. And look, I have nephews. I understand kids cry. I have no problem with that either. But we are in an enclosed environment with a lot of other people. And just that nod of respect of saying, I see what we're about. And to the best of our ability, we will not be allowing our children to scream at the top of their lungs for 3 hours on it. It's just that nod of respect of everyone's on the same page.
We're trying.
Everybody's
We're on
trying.
the team.
Yeah.
We're trying.
Yeah.
I'm not an island. I know
Yes.
that this is affecting you.
Exactly.
Okay, so real quick, we'll shift gears before we lose you. Margaret, we are always talking about how and where and when we get our books and also how we're listening to them.
Yes.
So with your background with working at the bookstore, you love bookstores, libraries as well, and also the way that we can kind of get audios.
I'm big library, as I've mentioned maybe once or twice on this podcast. I'm a big fan of libraries. I read in hardcover or paperback traditional books, and then I do a lot of audiobooks through the Overdrive app. Others have Libby, same thing. It's from Overdrive. So I listen to a lot of audiobooks that way. And I also do Kindle, which you can also read on your phone as well through the app. But fortunately, libraries have expanded themselves in such a way that you can have it in any form. So that's why I'm constantly able to read 3 or 4 books at a time, because I have them on every kind of platform you can actually have.
So what do? Are you having any time to read right now?
Not as much as I would like. The days are pretty packed right now, but I've gotten really into audiobooks over the last year as well. I think because of the pandemic. Remember during the pandemic, everybody just went on walks. We couldn't do anything. So the only thing that we could do, it's like your neighborhood just emptied out and everybody was constantly just walking everywhere just to get outside.
I loved it.
I loved it too. I've also kept it up.
Yeah, I do. Same as except for right now when it's 118. But
yeah, the Sunset Walk in 117 is a little much, but I still do it. But I've maintained the audiobook, and that's gonna stick. I love it.
Yeah,
I love it too. That's actually what I'm doing when I'm working out or I'm walking my neighborhood. I'm not listening to music. I'm listening to audiobooks.
And by the way, it's Steven Weber who's
I know.
did the Falling audiobook. So that was pretty dream come true, right?
Completely.
Oh,
And
wow.
from him being on Wings, it just felt
That was
right.
beautiful. Like
Yeah.
there's a synergy there. There's
Exactly.
something going on that's meant to be again.
Exactly.
And then even if you like audiobooks, by the way, you should be looking at that Libro FM because that's the new way to get those
Right.
through a local bookstore. So I know Poison Pen, Changing Hands, both on there. And then you're supporting your independent bookseller while still enjoying your audiobooks. And
No, I
you can
didn't-
get your walk-in.
I didn't know that until today when you mentioned
I finally
it.
had something to share of value.
I loved it.
Well, it was a moment with Margaret and TJ, our first author in-house.
so excited.
Congratulations again. And thank you so much. And we promise to never be obnoxious travelers and always to be committed readers.
Well, I can tell, like, look, as a flight attendant, you can tell very easily who your good passengers and who your troubled passengers are going to be, and neither of you would be the hot spots. Trust me. Trust
All right.
me.
Woo!
I try to keep to myself.
Oh, we can plan a trip again. See you next time. Keep reading. Thanks for listening to Olivia's Book Club, the podcast. I'm your host, Olivia Fierro. Our producer is Margaret Stewart. Our editor is Nick Sanchez. You can send us an email with your thoughts or your book recommendations. Olivia's Book Club at azfamily.com is the address. And you can check out Olivia's Book Club on Facebook or find us on Instagram. Hello, Bookstagrammers, at olivias.bookclub. And Margaret is at Overbooked and Overdue. Make sure to rate and subscribe to this podcast and tell your friends. You can find us on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and Amazon Music.